Hi everybody, Leslie here. I'm back in my craft lab. I'm here with a video that was originally supposed to be for the Crafting Together with All Brands September monthly video hop. But unfortunately, my original video, there was something corrupt in it and it would not export. So I've had to refilm it. The theme was citrus. I will still link to everybody else's videos around the theme of citrus. It's just I'm about 3 weeks late. I didn't get a chance to re-record it until now because my oldest daughter's off to university. I thought I'd show you my go-to technique for making masculine style cards. It doesn't need to be masculine. This is an Eclipse card. This was my husband's birthday card 3 or 4 years ago. The original one that I made in my first video, I've already sent it to my dad and I'll stick a photo of that up. These are using alphabet dies. If you've got a die that's all stuck together, so this is Time for Tea Designs. I think it's just called Thank You. I'll link it if I can find it. This is a single die that cuts all the letters out all at once. And if you don't like the idea of having to cut loads of layers and stick them together, I've got a variation on it to make a single layer card. So lots of tips and tricks. I'm actually just going to apologise for my nails. I've been gardening. I always have natural nails and I've broken some of my nails. And I've also got washi tape holding one on by a thread. But the only mean comment I've ever had on any of my videos was about my nails, so I'm going to apologise in advance for those. If it offends anybody, I'm really sorry. So let's get on with it. I'm going to show you this one start to finish. Hope you enjoy. So this card doesn't need too many supplies. I've got a pre-folded card blank. This is just a shop bought one, and I've pre-cut my panel. That's my stamping card, so whatever card you want to do your stamping on, and I've actually done it a little bit bigger than my card blank. I've got my bag of white scraps that I use to cut out all my extra letters from. You could use pretty much any stamps for these. This is my go-to stamp set that I use for this all the time. This is the Halftone Halftone circles. This has been out since 2017, but they still make this one. I've got Halftone Label Love. All I'm going to use out of that is just the birthday, just because I like the font on it. And then I've got Halftone Bold Alphabet. So it happens to be Halftone products that I'm using today. No reason, just because these are ones I've had for years and I always revisit. Other things that I pulled out that I thought you could use in the same way: blobs, texture, anything like that. This is a little bit sketchy. This is an old one, I think, from Sheena Douglas. It's called Texture It. These ones are all Craftwork Cards ones, went out of business quite a few years ago. But again, anything that's this sort of intended to be mixed media texture type blobs, I think would work. I think you could probably even use the butterflies on these. That is like, you know, they're not perfect looking. Splatters, anything that's a, you know, a textury background. So I think you could even do it with this one's like got tiny text on it. I think you could do it with things like that. This one I've got more recently. This one's from Every Craft's a Bargain. And this is the Arty Texture Blobs A6 Part 1. And they're bigger than they look on the front. They're just like little texture blobs. This is a really old magazine set. Anything that's got some solid stamps and maybe some textures, anything like that, mix and match from different sets. Doesn't need to be what I'm using. All we're going to do is random stamp across our panel. I've gone with citrus colours. I've got Melon Ice, Glitz, Grass Skirt, Orange Peel, Lemongrass. These are all Catherine Pooler dye inks, but try it with whatever inks you've got. You can try it with Distress because it doesn't need to come out perfect for this technique. You can try it with whatever dye inks. You can try it with pigment inks. Whatever you want will work for Eclipse cards. And I'm just going to pick some of the paler colours first, just because they're easier to clean off. And I've just got my stamp chamois to clean off in between colours. So while I'm stamping this, just a note about colours. When you choose your colours, and one of the nice things about picking a theme like this is you're unlikely to get that horrible muddy effect. So the orange and the green might go a little bit muddy together, but it should be in a tone within the colour family that you've chosen, which I think is a nice way to choose colours if you're not great at choosing them, which I'm not. So I tend to stick to a colour family, and this citrus theme's perfect for this time of year. If you want to do autumnal ones, you could add in some browns with these to go a bit more autumnal, but this citrus theme I thought works for men, works for women. And I know that I'm going to be putting a word across the centre of this, so I just need to keep this centrepiece covered. But I just keep going with my bigger stamps, and then we'll come back and probably infill with some of the smaller ones. Just keep going till you're happy with your composition. I'm happy with that. I know my word's going to go across the middle and my greeting's going down here. I might flip it upside down. I have not decided yet. Now, quick clean up. I am going to go and wash my hands and wash my stamp shadow because it covered me in ink. While my panel's drying, we're going to get our letters lined up ready. And I've just got a piece of, this is like a plasticky washi tape. And we're just going to use it to hold our letters together. And I'm going to stick it to the edge of my ruler to keep it nice and flat. And my ruler is going to serve another purpose because I'm going to use it to line up my letters. So I've got my H. Because I've only got one P, I'm just using a spacer, so that's the same width. So I picked, I think this is the D. We're just going to pop that in there as a spacer. And I'm just using this washi tape because it's wide enough to hold my letters. I'm unlikely to use it for anything else, so I don't feel like I'm wasting it. Because now we're going to take our spacer off. Very important, you don't want to cut it with your spacer on. And I'm just going to use my anti-static powder bag to take the majority of the sticky off this tape. And the reason I'm doing that is I know that this is quite sticky once it's down and it doesn't want to come back off. So I'm not going to use this tape to actually hold it onto my card. I'm just using it to hold my letters straight and in place. So now there's very, very little stick left on that. So anti-static powder that you'd use if you were heat embossing. If you don't have that, you can use baby powder, something like that. Now, this is my nice low-tack washi tape that I've used many, many times already, so that I know is not going to rip my nice stamp panel. Then we just need to run this through the die cut machine. We need to keep all of the letters, and we also need to keep the insides of any of the letters. So I need the middle of this P and the middle of the A because we're going to put those back in. But I need to go back, obviously, and cut my little P out again. And like I say, you need to keep hold of all your little middle pieces. Now, I'm going to come back and just cut a load of layers of my letters. And obviously, I'll need to double cut all of my P's. But whilst I'm doing that, I'm going to leave the glue on this drying. Very often, when you get card blanks, they're not exactly square. These are pre-scored cut card blanks. Very often when you fold them, they don't quite match up. You might not be able to see, it's only the tiniest amount on these. These are quite high quality ones and the folds still aren't always perfect. So my way of getting around that is I always, if I want to cover the full panel on the front, I always cut my panel so that it's a bit bigger than my card blank. Then all you need to do is use a wet glue and then something with a corner that you can push your card into. So I've just got one of my stamp platforms. I'm going to take my foam mat out of the way. You can do this with a scoreboard. You can do this with anything that's got a right angle corner. So we're going to put our card blank, and I always put my folded edge into a corner. We're going to cover the back of this with a wet glue, and then we can slide that in there. And then the overhang will only be on two sides, and then I'll show you how we cut that off. So wet glue on the back, make sure your card blank's pushed into whichever corner you're using, and then we can push our stamp panel in there as well. Which means we've got two sides exactly square, one of them being on our folded edge. And you can leave something heavy on it to dry, and it's better to leave it to dry for a few minutes before you try to trim the edges off. So you should be able to see I've got an overhang on two sides, and we'll come back to that in a minute and trim that off. So my next tip is how to stick your letters together really quickly. I've got a wet glue I'm going to put a little puddle of it on. This is just a plastic sheet. This is like an ink blending mat, but this is one I actually saved for this purpose. This is my gluing mat, really. And the glue just scrapes off it. If you've not got something like this, make your own. Just stick a piece of like cling film over some thick cardboard. It can be cereal packet. It doesn't need to be anything fancy, but I would recommend something waterproof, because if you just put it on paper, then the fibres in the paper will start picking up after a while. You could just do it straight onto your glass board if you've got one, but I prefer having something that I can take away and wash rather than having to wipe it and clean my glass mat all the time. Then the other thing I've got is really, really cheap, inexpensive makeup sponges. These ones are from Primark in the UK. You can usually get a big bag of them. They've got different sizes and shapes. And I keep mine in a little glass dessert pot. I put a little bit of water. This has got more water than I would normally keep in it because I forgot to put water in mine and I left it to go dry. So this one is very well loved, as you can see. It's all broken and mine went hard. I think it got too hot and all my water evaporated, but I'm trying to melt the glue off it with the water in here. So at the moment I've got more water in here than I would usually have. But that's how I store them, in usually just a tiny bit of water in the bottom. But don't do what I did and let it dry out. But you can use these time and time again. This one has been used for gluing dozens and dozens and dozens of times and still works perfectly fine. So the quickest way to stick your letters together, get them all lined up, and literally we're going to go dab, dab, dab. And less is more with wet glues. If you're used to using them, you will know that, because you will warp your paper. Depends on the glue, how much moisture content there is in the glue. Depends on the atmosphere where you live, if it's really humid. But really, really quick. This is 4 layers have I got going on here. And then my top layer will obviously be my 5th. And it really doesn't take a lot. You're only sticking little bits of paper together. Less is more. And that's 4 layers. And then the top 5th layer, I am just going to make sure that I'm not got glue on me whilst I do this one, because I don't want to smudge it. And this is so much quicker than sitting there with my fine tip bottle of glue and trying to do this. And it's a lot more economical than using, say, the double-sided sheets to stick it on the back. Now you can do that, obviously. If you've got double-sided sheets, you can stick them together that way. But how quick was that? And because it's wet glue, you've got a little bit of slide time as well if you don't get things perfectly lined up. So you can have a squeeze around, make sure it's lined up. So I'm just going to go through and glue the rest of my letters super quick. So next step, we still need to trim our edges off our card. So this has been sat drying, and the easiest way is to get long scissors. So whatever your longest straight scissors are, and then you can put that long edge up to your card blank. So my scissors are sat against my card blank and I'm just cutting from behind. So whatever happens, it will be exactly the same size as my card blank. So just using that blade to butt against it. You can try doing it in a trimmer or on a guillotine. And again, if you flip it over and cut from behind, you can see where the edge of your card blank is. But I'm not great with scissors. I can't cut straight lines, but I can manage that because I'm using the side of my card with my scissors butted against it. And we've just chopped a tiny bit off. And then the last stage, obviously, just pop our letters back in here. So they're just going to drop in like puzzle pieces. And if you've got any glue where you shouldn't, always sort of try to lift it off, scrape it back off. Don't rub, because you might smudge, oops, and I dropped that one. You might smudge your ink. All my little pieces, which I made sure I'd kept in my little dish, they're sitting ready now. So I just need to put a tiny bit more glue back in these little openings. And then I've just got my ball tool on hand. This is an old X-Cut pen that has the ball tools and a pin tool, which I always keep on my desk. I'll see if I can find a link to that. I've had this one for years and years. So I'm just using the ball tool to push them back down into the holes. So anything that you cut out, you need to put back in. And that's our Eclipse card all done. And you can see there's not a huge amount of dimension. So all I need is my little sub-sentiment. In this case, obviously I've done happy, so I'm going to add a birthday. I don't care if the happy doesn't come out perfectly. I just want the birthday. And we'll just ink that up. So I've not even inked all of the happy because I don't need to. And if you need to stamp in, if you're doing a nice solid stamp, I'd recommend for greetings especially VersaFine Onyx Black. And this is like an oil-based ink. And for nice solid stamps, it's the best one for good coverage and the best one for a nice black outline if that's what you want. And if you need to stamp in, you want to put your stamp down, and especially for solid stamps, give a nice bit of even pressure and keep it held there and press across the back. And without a stamping platform, and I let my ink dry then when I was talking to you, but it's come out pretty good. This is supposed to look like that. This is meant to look like one of those Dymo labels. And I might just do it again just because I was chatting and I let that dry. So I just want to show you, you can, without a stamping platform, get a nice solid stamp. Same again, but don't talk too long like I do. So, like I say, put your stamp down, hold it in place with one hand and apply pressure from behind with the other. So hopefully you can see that's now nice solid black outline, no stamping platform required. It takes a little bit of practice, but it is perfectly possible to do it without a stamping platform if you've not got one. If you don't like foam pads, you can always use like your strips just to layer up underneath. Make sure you use these things. The sticky on them doesn't last forever. Depends how good a quality they are in the first place, obviously, but use them up. Don't keep them for best. And that's my card done. My go-to masculine card for when I don't know what else to do. This is a variation. This isn't an Eclipse card. This is for when you're a bit short on time and you don't want to cut all those layers. This is also really good if you're worried about the postage. So we're going to go for a single layer card. And I thought I'd show you a couple of different ways you could do it. This one is using the sticky all over post-it notes. So I just stuck my sticky all over post-it note onto a piece of scrap card, cut out my letters, and I popped them onto my card blank. Now this could have been direct onto a card blank. I've just done it on a panel the same as I did before, but if you really want true single layer, just do it straight onto your card blank. And I just used my T-square ruler just to line them up and get them sort of straight. The only thing I'd say about this is if you've got any sticker release paper, it's easier to peel off. If you've been using double-sided tape sheets, save that backing because it's handy for things like that. And I've got a folder of it somewhere, but I can't find it. So I just stuck it on a scrap of card today. And I still managed to peel them off. They just weren't quite as smooth as they should have been once I'd peeled them off. And then the other way to do it, exactly the same method, but this is really old. But they still make this. So Hunky Dory do a version of this now. This is Craft Creative Peel Off Magi Film, or as it actually says on the back, it's Peel Off's the original magic tape. So I did the same thing and cut my letters out of this magic tape. This was originally designed so that you could use like the leftover bits inside peel off stickers. And Hunky Dory still do it. Peel off transfer foil, and I will stick a link in the description if you want some of this stuff. But it works as masking paper because obviously it was designed to be stuck to your card and then peeled back off. So it's like a see-through plastic masking paper, which is what I tend to use it for. I rarely use peel-off stickers, and you can see it's on there. Same principle, but this time instead of stamping our letters and lifting them up, we're actually just going to leave a shadow of our letters. So I've just stuck with the same colours, and the stamps I'm going to use this time just to show a bit of variation. These are the Arty Texture Blobs from Evercraft's a Bargain, but I've only pulled out 3 stamps this time just to show you don't need tons and tons of stamps for this, and I'm just going to do similar thing and random stamp to create my image. Now you do just want to try and make sure that you press hard enough to get your stamp into the gaps in between, because that's kind of the whole point. You need to be able to see where the letters are when you peel this off. Now, if you're using something like Post-it note, like I am here, eventually the ink's going to soak through. Leave it to dry a little bit in between stamps. So I thought with this one, which has got a finer texture, anywhere that's missed a little bit in between, I'm going to come back and put that sort of veining, and hopefully I'll be able to get that in the gaps a little bit better. So that's with the Post-it notes. Looks like an absolute hot mess, but before we peel off, I'm just going to leave everything to dry for a little bit. So I'm just going to come and do basically the same thing on this. And I've just got some scraps of kitchen roll. So I've just ripped up some of my kitchen roll. Because this is shiny surface, when I stamp over this, it's going to pool on it. And I don't want to keep transferring it back onto my stamps and it smooshing and spreading. And I'm going to leave that side there to dry for a few seconds. And I have a really bad habit of using my hand to dry my stamps, and then I get a terrible inky hand. So if my hands are inky on camera, that is why. For now, I haven't over stamped anywhere, so I'm just going to go back and just using a tiny bit of kitchen roll, just dab the ink and give it a little wipe off. So you can see there's quite a lot of ink sitting on the top of those letters. You actually can see the composition you're doing a little bit better because it's clear, and you can see a bit more what we're going to end up with. So obviously while I was stamping that one, this one's had time to dry, and obviously this is the best bit. This is the reveal. Now we'll see. I might be able to reuse these masks, so I'm going to be quite careful to start with. If you leave them to dry, but you'll see what I mean, that the ink soaks through, you can see on the other side, and I might get one more use out of them, but probably not much more than that. Yeah, this one's ripped. So this is why, if you're going to do this a lot, it might be worth getting some of the more like plastic type. And I am guessing that if you do like vinyl crafts with like a Cricut or another electronic cutting machine, I am guessing that the transfer tape for that is really similar. So it might be worth having a go if you've already got that in your stash. But if you've not, have a go with your Post-it notes. These are the sticky all over ones, but if you get clever with the normal Post-it notes that have just got a strip, you can always stick them at one end. Now let's see how these ones peel off. And I've not overstamped really enough on my Y, but I think you can still see that's come out pretty well. So I'm quite pleased with both of those. So basically the same card, but they'll always be completely random because you're random stamping. This is basically really similar to the Alter New Label Loves. This is from 2016. I didn't want to cut up my solid happy birthday, so this is birthday on its own. So I thought to make it a true one layer card, I would use this one rather than my Alter New one. Exactly the same idea. This was a card that I did in exactly the same way, and I used some old scrapbooking stickers, and I didn't take any of the sticky off. Now I think if I put a little bit of anti-static powder on, this would have worked, but you can probably see I've left the back layer of my sticker on with that, so it didn't quite work. But different fonts, same idea, if you ignore the fact that the back layer of the sticker stuck too hard. So you can try it with your stickers, just obviously don't be too precious about them because they might not come back off. This obviously is using star stamps. I had a couple of solid ones and a patterned one, and you can do exactly the same thing. So have a look what you've got in your stash. You could just pop yourself a die cut straight on the top, but it's definitely my go-to technique. Stamp a blobby, colourful background. You could do it in team colours if they're a sports fan, anything goes. But that is my go-to for masculine cards. Well, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed seeing how I made all these. For those of you who are regulars here, I am changing my channel name. I'm going to have really similar graphics. I'm just getting rid of the words in Windsor out of my channel name. So if you do see a change, it is still me. It's not somebody copying me. It's me changing it. If you're interested in the other citrus ones, I've linked those in the description below. So that was the Crafting Together with All Brands September blog hop if you've not seen those already. Thanks for watching and bye for now.